Today's Look Through Confidentiality is brought to you by our friends over at World of Tanks, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, a free-to-play game with over 100 million players worldwide, and also for the PC. It's got about 600 tanks, destroyers, artillery, light, medium, and heavy. I don't even know there were that many tanks to begin with, but there's always a new way to play. Get bored of one, just switch to the other. And of course, ladies and gentlemen, you can drive that tank through vast open fields, deserts, up steep hills, somehow sneak through forests, somehow. And then of course, play your matches in urban industrial zones. You got about 40 different arenas to pick from, okay? So the world is your oyster. Of course, ladies and gentlemen, they've focused on historical accuracy and inspiration, meaning that they've got authentic models and very authentic vehicles. Characteristics that'll make you feel like you're actually rolling a tank through whatever war zone you're riding in. Of course, you can also earn experience points, modify, and upgrade your tank, meaning that you can create the ultimate steel beast ready to take on any other player, no matter where they are. And of course, ladies and gentlemen, if you download World of Tanks using the link in the description below, you can use our promo code, ladies and gentlemen, TANKMANIA, and using that code TANKMANIA, you get access to 7 days of premium access, 250,000 credits, the premium tank Excelsior, tier 5 by the way, and 3 rental tanks for 10 battles each. Tiger 131 tier 6, Cromwell B tier 6, and a T3485M tier 6. Ladies and gentlemen, please check out World of Tanks with the description below. Make sure to use that promo code and have a good time joining the World of Tanks. Hello guys and gals, me Mutahar, and today we're going to talk about money laundering and live streaming. Now this is actually an older topic that I wanted to cover for a while, and I really wanted to wait until the dust finally settled, and it has settled for a few months now. Back in October of 2021, ladies and gentlemen, it came out that Twitch unfortunately had an entirely poggers leak. If you were on 4chan at the time, you'd realize that Twitch is an American video live streaming service that focuses on video. Okay, I'm sorry. Their community is also a disgusting toxic cesspool. No lies spotted there. But of course, what was important is to foster more disruption and competition in the online video streaming space, we have completely pwned them. And in part 1, we are releasing the source code from almost 6,000 internal Git repositories, including the entirety of Twitch.tv, mobile, desktop, and video game console Twitch clients, various proprietary SDKs, and internal AWS services used by Twitch, every other proprietary that Twitch owns, including IGDB and CurseForge, an unreleased Steam competitor from Amazon Game Studios, and their red teaming tools. And of course, the cherry on top of this was creator payout reports from 2019 until now. So of course, this is how people found out how much their favorite streamer was making. It was no shock that streams like Critical Role or the largest streamer on the platform, XQC, was making somewhere in the ballpark of millions of dollars. This wasn't shocking to anybody. What was a little bit shocking was when a few people in the community, especially the Turkish side, finally got their hands on this entire data set and looked through some people that they already considered suspicious. Now, before an alleged $10 million got allegedly laundered through Twitch, it turns out that around this moment, there were a few streamers, specifically from Turkey, some of the largest streamers. In this case, one of them you may know is Jarain, who actually was one of the platform leaders, the campaign leaders behind the Temiz Twitch movement, which is basically translated to Clean Twitch. Now, on November 2nd of 2021, literally not too long after, a month later, Twitch actually did respond and actually took action against 150 streamers that were part of this alleged $10 million money laundering scandal. Now, what's important to notice over here is the reason this all had happened was there were a few streamers, a few Turkish viewers that were actually parsing through this data. Now, if you went onto forums like FRMTR, which is a forum for Knights Online Premium, an MMORPG that honestly, I couldn't tell you if it was great or not because I couldn't even figure out how to actually get into the game. But generally looking at a game for it, the gameplay, it seems like a fun old style of MMO that has not aged as gracefully as you would think. But this isn't a review for a super old MMO. Anyways, the community had parsed through this data and found out there were actually a few streamers that had little to no following. Now, this isn't really wild. If you go to Twitch, there's a lot of people that are streaming to 0, 1, or 2 viewers. But in this case, it appeared that there were actually streamers that had somewhere in the ballpark of 50 viewers on average. Yet when you looked at their payouts, they were apparently raking in somewhere around $1,800 a day if you did the math, allegedly. Now, of course, to understand how are they making this money? Well, it was actually through the Twitch bit system. So this is where the actual thing gets really interesting. This is where it gets into the point where you actually get into the money laundering phase, allegedly. Of course, allegedly is the important aspect. Now, to realize how these scammers or hackers or criminals have done this, they actually used the process of actually getting stolen credit cards. Now, how does a credit card get stolen? Now, you might be wondering, maybe somebody dropped it, you picked it up, and you moved on with your life. And while that's true, generally, if you lose your credit card, you probably call up the credit card company and cancel it right there and then. Of course, that doesn't stop somebody from taking your credit card, going to a few stores, and tapping it. There are a lot of stores in weirder neighborhoods that actually don't have tap functionality because most of those cards are probably stolen, which when chargebacks happen, ultimately they're going to harm the actual, company where the chargebacks are happening. So the store is ultimately the one that's getting hurt in the process. Now, of course, looking into this entire situation, what really made sense is this probably targeted older individuals that used online shopping. Now, whenever you go onto the internet and you type in or you try to purchase, whatever you want, normally you'll notice that the credit card entry field will often just have your credit card, your expiration time, basically the date, and then of course your 3-digit CCV number if your financial institution goes for it. Now, of course, this also implies on the fact that every single website you go to is really safe in regards to it. Now, of course, generally, I have one rule when it comes to credit cards. Only use it at a store with a POS terminal. Basically, when you go to a gas station and there's that little terminal where you tap your card or you stick it in, that's fine because you're interfacing directly with the banking institution or a payment processor. The other avenue is using a website that literally has its own payment processor that's usually separate from the website. A lot of big, high-tier, respectable online shopping firms will do this. But there are those shady places, those shady phishing sites where you enter your credit card information and it gets stolen. Anyways, that's how these cards ended up getting stolen, and they basically got put all over on the dark web, or, people just amassed a whole bunch of these. Now, the next stage here is buying bits. Now, if you don't know, Twitch has a bit system, which basically the bits allow you to go to Twitch and buy, let's say, 1,000 of them for like $10, whatever the going rate is. So you give Twitch $10, they give you the equivalent in bits. Now, once you've done that, congratulations. The money is kind of basically laundered at that point. So what had happened was these guys had used stolen credit cards, purchased a bunch of bits from Twitch, and without any real checking, and of course, the money that was being spent was a little dribs and drabs at a time. Not enough for anybody to immediately notice it unless they were combing through every single one of their bank statements. You take a little bit at a time, you didn't expect a lot of chargebacks because obviously once chargebacks start coming in, Twitch is going to get really angry. And of course, once you've noticed that, hey, you've put in a bunch of money, you've got a bunch of bits, now it's time to find the streamers. And in this case, there were like hundreds of these people. Some of them were minors. So basically, they would have like a 40 to 50 user stream. You would give them some bits day to day. You would take 80% of whatever their payout was and give them 20%. So again, there's actually full-on documentation that backs this. Now, one user known as Grimnax, who basically had showcased a Discord conversation they had with one of these actual scammers. So here they wrote in Turkish, which thankfully I had translated using Google Translate to English. And while it's not a perfect translation, I think it answers the questions just fine. According to the translation, this individual says, "Hey, we want to work with you," to which Grimnax says, "What do you mean by regular donation?" So of course, they tell you we will regularly donate a certain amount to you each month, and we will give you 20% of this bond as income. We will regularly provide you with passive income. In return, all we ask of you is to publish regularly. So they were basically recruiting streamers to get down and basically say, hey, as long as you consistently stream, we're going to keep sending you bits. Now, at the end of the month, when you get your payout, just give us like all of it or 80% of that and keep 20 for yourself. So for a Turkish streamer who was averaging 40 viewers, imagine if they got $2,000 in bits. Now, of course, if you get 20% of that, I'd consider it a higher payday than what they'd get at any given moment. And remember, that's stable, solid income from this entire laundering operation. So again, while it's very illegal, I can understand why some streamers, younger, especially streamers that don't have a following, chose to partake in this. That doesn't make it right, but of course you can see how this was enticing to people, who were basically given money for free just for participating in the stream. I don't know why the actual scammers didn't just set up their own streams. Maybe they could set up some VTuber stuff, maybe some lo-fi beat stream, call it a day. But maybe this was just a way for them to breed legitimacy and have sort of like a proxy. So in case shit really did hit the fan, the people who were taking the money as bits would be the one who would face a lion's share of the criminal penalties, which unfortunately it seems like that's where the story headed to. Now, to understand, money laundering is not exactly the most complicated process. I mean, it is, but to describe how money laundering is, let's get rid of layering, placement, integration, all that for a minute, okay? We can discuss technical terms, but just to layman this shit out, imagine if you went out in the public sphere and you found a duffel bag full of money, around something like $1 million. Now, you can't take $1 million and just say, oh, I found it in the middle of the street. Let me go buy a house. Let me buy a car. Let me do something, all right? I mean, chances are you could, but there's going to be some federal agencies that jump in and probably put the red flag on you. So here's the thing. If you have that much money, chances are, if you want to take it to a bank, all right, they're going to ask you where your proof of funds are. Any financial institution, any large-scale purchase you buy will trip FinTrack over a certain amount anyways. And yes, $1 million is well over that certain amount. Now, of course, at the end of the day, the way money can be laundered is quite simply. If you're a large-scale criminal operation, you probably have bought banks and actual financial institutions. You've probably bought trading institutions, where you can just move money around really quickly. If you're somebody that's like mid-tier, you probably have a couple cash businesses where you mix bad money with good money and you mix it up, you put it into the bank and you report it on your taxes. And you hope that because you're playing under certain thresholds, you're not running like a grocery store or something like a small corner bodega and reporting 20 million a month on the profits, okay? Something normal, something tangible. You're just routing drips and drabs, logical income that if tomorrow you were to get audited or some government agent was to look at you, you could explain it reasonably well. And of course, what it came down to was because this was credit card fraud and ultimately they were doing tiny, tiny drips and drabs at a time, they had to launder it through a method which didn't require purchasing a business or having some fancy laundering scheme. They decided to go through it right by Twitch. And of course, this makes a lot of sense. Buying bits from Twitch means that when you purchase your bits, that money gets fed into Amazon's accounting. And of course, they get so many transactions per day into their various holding companies that, again, if some IRS agent, some tax agent wanted to crack open the books, they'd have to go right to Amazon. And as far as you're considered, all it looks like is you're getting paid out by Amazon directly as a contractor. Now, of course, a lot of these IRS agents, they don't understand that live streaming or how much money you could make per viewer. For them, as long as you're getting paid by a good, jolly tech company, it's all fine and dandy, or it should be. Now, of course, as time advances and as knowledge gets expanded, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of tax agencies right now. Turkey's probably the leader in it, considering it just happened to them. They probably realize that if you're running a stream of 40 to 50 viewers, you're not going to be making $1,800 a day. That's an insane amount. There are streamers that have multiple times, like hundreds of times that viewership, that aren't cracking that many donos or bits per day. It's an insane amount, and it's something that people should, reasonably consider. But again, if you're a tax agent, chances are you're overlooking it. And realistically, if you think about it, if it wasn't for those Twitch leaks, this probably would have still been happening. The only reason we knew anything about this, the only reason this ever came out to light was because of an actual hack that allowed those people that were already skeptic the hardcore evidence to look through and actually understand that a lot of their suspicions ended up being true. Now, of course, it didn't all end over there. Obviously, as the months had passed, the Turkish government and their financial institutions got really interested once they realized that all this money was flowing through. Remember, $10 million, 9.8 is a lot of goddamn money. And of course, it ended up having 40 people being arrested for this alleged scheme. Now, of course, some of those people, unfortunately, ended up being minors. Yes, there were actually minors involved in this situation. So imagine being under the age of 18, somebody hits you up on Discord and says, hey, I'm going to give you like $400 a month as long as I can run my bits through you. Now, to understand, their scheme wasn't pulling the wool over anybody's eyes. This was very much an illegal operation. So unfortunately, those children, even if they are minors, have committed or have been part of a serious financial fraud. And that's not something that's ever going to go off records easily. Maybe because they're minors, they might get taken, maybe because they're minors, they might get treated a little bit better. But of course, at the end of the day, if they're the only ones that you can implicate, it just all goes out there. The problem with this entire situation is because it's done on the internet and it's done through Discord and it's done through proxies, finding these people is never going to be the easiest case. The only people you can bring the hammer down on are streamers. It's kind of like crypto scams. If you look at a crypto scam, usually the people who are well behind the shadows, hidden through layers of proxies, building shit coins and NFTs are usually the safest. It's usually the influencers that they hire who serve as the public face actually are the ones who are going to suffer the most legal consequences. They're the only ones that are actually going to do jail time, because when shit hits the fan, when the hammer drops, and drop it will, ultimately, you have nobody that you can rely on. You have nobody that you can pin the blame on. And when it comes to law enforcement, they'll just find whoever they can actually pin down and make an example out of them. But they didn't stop over there. In Istanbul in May of 2022, there were further raids that happened. Video proof of them actually exists. You can see them breach entire houses, literally Rainbow Six style, SWAT 4 style, just to find some of these streamers that were part of a money laundering operation. They brought the big guns out for this one. Now, obviously, as a lot of the people that were campaigning on this, like Jahrein, they actually ended up having communications with people who were in the political parties for Turkey, and they actually decided to look into it as a financial crime and actually pursue this even further. This is literally the one case where influencers worked to actually stop a real scam on the platform, a real criminal element, and the government actually got involved and handled it the right way. Now, of course, what happened to some of the streamers that were allegedly involved in the situation? Well, in some cases, people like Easter Gamers TV, who is one of the largest streamers on the platform, posted an apology to YouTube unlisted, sending it out to Twitter by all things, which, again, I think is kind of shitty behavior, given that if you want to make an apology video, as many people should see it. Of course, around 160,000 people viewed his video, and the basic translation on this comes out to effectively him saying that he never really had any idea this was truly going on, so actual denial. He basically stated, according to a translation, not someone that pays close attention to his bank accounts. He claimed that he had no idea about the thousands of dollars pouring into his pocket. Again, how do you not have any idea how much money is coming into you? Don't you pay taxes every year? Don't you realize when you make a significant amount of money, it's going to cost you, it's going to run you up into different brackets? Obviously, I'm counting a little bit suspicious on this behalf, but of course, maybe he really didn't know how much money was coming in. Maybe he was financially stupid. But of course, that's just one of the answers that people took. And of course, if you look at his video, it didn't get liked a whole lot. And of course, the comment sections had people who were genuinely questioning his motives and his response to the situation. Of course, other creators like Orkun Koruglu, all right, honestly, I hope I pronounced that right. Turkish is a very, very difficult language. And of course, he was the one that said, yeah, it's actually pretty true. So of course, this is where he describes, they told me, the scammers, that they were obtaining bits by watching ads on multiple computers. I saw it as a revenue and continued for 2 to 3 months. After I learned about the scam, I quit and I haven't done it for 6 months now. Now, had I known this was a scam, would I even get involved? The reality is, if they're already cheating the advertising system, that is a scam towards Twitch in general. And while I don't think that may necessarily be illegal, that should probably be grounds for your partnerships getting terminated. Of course, there were entire esports teams that were also suspending users who were allegedly on this payroll, allegedly on the scam payroll, where they were making a crap ton of money for very, very little viewers. But at the end of the day, what happened here was Twitch was the one that ended up having the most harm in this situation. This was the first real case of one of the largest social media platforms having been used in a money laundering operation. It wasn't that Twitch was complicit. It wasn't that Twitch had known this was happening. It was that Twitch provided its platform and didn't have enough regulations and checks to realize that $10 million have flown through their money, had flown through their accounting, and had been part of a money laundering operation. Twitch was basically used as the primary tool of laundering. Literally, it was the front if we had to use proper terms. That's what Twitch ended up doing. And of course, was there really ever a response from Twitch? Honestly, aside from them suspending and punishing certain users for being part of it, nothing really had jumped in. And of course, this makes me kind of wonder towards the tail end of this video, what this is actually like going forward for a lot of other social media services. Remember, bits aren't just an exclusive development at Twitch. You'll probably find a similar equivalent on every live streaming service you go to. I know TikTok has gifts, YouTube has super chats, Facebook has something that I don't even recall at the moment, but every service has an ability for you to buy little tokens from the company itself and use it to distribute amongst your favorite streamer. It's this methodology, it's this tool that is so ripe for abuse. And of course, when credit cards get involved and various payment services are involved, and of course IDs aren't always checked, especially when you're buying like $5 of, $5 of donations, $10 of donations, 20, maybe even 100 at a time. Of course, whenever you use any credit card service, it's not like all of them alert you for every dollar that you spend. There's probably stuff like this going on to this day over on Twitch, or even amongst various other streaming sites. It's made it to a point where nowadays, ever since I've seen this, I sometimes put on like a 10, 20 viewer stream and just count the donations sometimes. If it ever appears to be too consistent and too large, that might be another example of possible money laundering happening over at Twitch. And of course, one of the reasons that I was super duper interested in to begin with was I literally thought of this idea like years before it actually materialized. And of course, before we go into Moody, you thought of money laundering. No. I thought of the idea that criminal operations could use the accounting of Google and Amazon in order to route some of their own money through. Of course, for companies that make billions of dollars a year, millions of dollars is oftentimes considered a rounding error. And I'm sure there's a lot of criminals that would love to take advantage of it. I think going forward, honestly, a lot of services, if they want to make sure they're not heavily regulated by financial institutions and governments, are going to put the extra layer and effort to make sure streaming and money laundering doesn't often combine. Because as the system exists right now, unfortunately, it's like an entry-level money laundering honeypot. And of course, at that moment, you're going to have to realize it's a scary world we live in. So of course the Turkish people got involved and the Turkish community solved, or at least diminished a lot of the money laundering that happened in their communities. To this day, there's not been many more examples of money laundering. There's not been more scandals that have kicked up. And even if they haven't, that doesn't rule out that maybe stuff is still happening in the background anyways. Ladies and gentlemen, the world of criminality is oftentimes the most interesting thing to me. And of course, it's one that I absolutely love to peel back and see just how it evolves as time goes on. Ladies and gentlemen, if you like what you saw, please like, comment, and subscribe. Dislike it if you dislike it. And for legal sake, and YouTube's sake, and my own sanity's sake, do not partake in the activities of money laundering. It's really illegal. Anyways, this is me, Mudahar, and I am out.